Welcome, everyone, to our Wellness Wednesdays. And in fact, this is an exciting Wellness Wednesday because it is the first time that we are going live with a very fun and dynamic show called That's Not True. You know, one of the things that happens for me, both working with Market America, the professional division of Market America Nutrimetrics, and of course, as a physician that speaks to the community about health, about outreach, and about that one thing that you can do that can help you achieve better well-being, body, mind, and spirit, is questions come up, myths come up, and people want to know, is it true? We've all grown up with these ideas of the right way to live, the right way to sleep, and the right way to eat. And yet, each and every one of you is an individual. And as such, your activity levels, right? Your age, the size of your family, the things that you love to do that bring you passion, and the things that you know you need to do, but you're just not doing them all the time. This is what makes you, you. And that's what allows us to curate questions to help answer or personalize a health plan for you. And that's what this is all about, is so that if you've got a question, something you've heard, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions that we can answer. Is it a full truth, a half truth, or that's not true? This is going to be absolutely fantastic. Now, there's a couple of things that we want to do as we get started. You've got two areas that you can type in questions. And really, what I would love to have you do is use the question and answer box tonight if you've got a particular question for me. But there's some rules to this game. You need to write them just like this. Dr. D, I've always heard, fill in the blank with your question and then ask me, is that true? These are the questions that we're going to pull up and answer, some tonight and some throughout the week, because we go live every night at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to talk about health topics, you topics, community topics. The whole goal here is to make sure that when you leave one of these webinars, one of these live events on Facebook, that you say, I didn't even know that. I'm going to do something with that. I want to share that information. If there's these little things we can do that help you tweak a sleep routine, an eating routine, an exercise routine, or a self-love, self-care, or share the love, share the care tip, believe me, we are going to change our community for the better. And that's really what this is all about, our shared experience and making sure that each and every one of us feels like we are on top of the world. In doing that, to help me help you feel like you're on top of the world, I want to introduce you to our panelists here tonight. Some of our panelists have written in questions, and I invited them to share tonight with me. So I am joined by good friend Bonnie Gallagher. Bonnie Gallagher from Salisbury, Maryland is here, and she's got some great questions that we're going to share with you, and I'm going to answer if that's true or not. I've got V here, a good new friend of mine that is really helping young women each and every day meet not just their health goals, but their family goals. And this is all about kind of being the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, as I always like to say. So V and I have talked about how we can help individuals do that with better sleep habits, eating habits, and even supplement habits. But we want to make sure that we tailor those recommendations to the type of friends, family, and community members she's working with. And then I've got Sandra Moore with me from Olympia, Washington. So she's kind of bringing over the West Coast. And, we always say, Sandra, and I get to say this because I used to live in Oregon, is West Coast, best coast. Whoa. Whoa. So Sandra's here, and she's going to also share some of her questions. And you guys have written in through the week. And what that means is that you are loving 28 Days of Health. 28 Days of Health goes live each and every night with health topics, and it allows you to talk to each other, talk to me, and throughout the week, send in questions so that we can find out, Is it true or not? So, what I want to do today and what I would like to do tonight is to encourage you to send in or write in your questions in the Q&A box. But also sit back, enjoy yourself, and maybe play a little bit of this game with anyone that's with you at the house. Perhaps before I answer if it's true, you guys will make your own guess. If you're like me, that's exactly what growing up in the 70s was like. Those game shows were on TV, and I wanted just to see if I knew the answer before they revealed it. If you're a Jeopardy person, you know what I'm talking about, right? You probably have your own roster of how much money Alex would have given you if you'd been on TV. So let's have some fun with this and your questions. Bonnie, let's go ahead and start with you. You've got a question that came in, some myths that have been percolating out there. Let's hear it.
Okay, so Dr. D, I've heard so many different things about breakfast, and to eat it, how to eat it, and how it affects you. What to eat and when. Is it true that protein should be the first thing to consume when you wake? Is that true or not?
Okay. So, Bonnie, this is a whole truth, but there's going to be a caveat. And if you know me, I go from A to Z to get to B. So, you're going to hear my whole story, right? This is a full truth, everyone. Protein wears the pants in the family when it comes to health. Getting a sufficient amount of protein for your gender, your activity level, and your age. So, one of the things I want you to hear about this truth is that there's not a formula for it, meaning Bonnie and I might consume different amounts of protein, not because of gender, we share the same gender, but maybe because of activity level, maybe because of sleep habits, maybe because of age. These things also play a role in how much protein we need. It's important to also talk about protein as the first meal of the day for one of the reasons why people have always learned or been told you shouldn't skip breakfast. And it's because protein, in particular in the morning, has been shown to improve hunger signaling as well as hormone signaling later in the day. Let me break that down for you. Individuals that start their day with some kind of carbohydrate, and often with very simple carbohydrates, it's not uncommon in the United States and around the world to see individuals with pastries, with breads, with a lot of grains that are refined carbohydrates or refined sugars. Then you'll see things like jellies and jams, fruit juices, and these sorts of things. And what we're getting isn't that carbohydrates are bad for you. We're just getting a pretty significant carbohydrate load. And what we're not getting is some of the building blocks, the amino acids that are required for you to be able to build strong muscle and regulate those hormones later, including, Bonnie, the hunger hormone. So when we wake up, there's been a tug of war throughout the night between a hormone called leptin and a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone, and leptin is the push the plate away, I feel satisfied, I've eaten enough hormone. We expect that you're going to wake up because you're well slept with a good balance between these two hormones. Individuals that don't sleep well often wake up pretty hungry. And so while you think that the first thing you want to do is get down the easiest thing to digest, in fact, you want to turn the clock back and think about your evening habit. What did you do the night before that may have disrupted your sleep? But what is true is to eat the protein in the morning so that you can reset some of those hunger signals. So you can reset some of the glucose and insulin um, signals so that you can reset your body's energy potential, or really jumpstart your body's energy potential for the day. Individuals that consume at least 20 grams of protein, it's not supposed to be a whole protein meal. Individuals that consume 20 grams of protein minimum, if you are physically active, you may choose to get more than this, or just make sure that you're getting a sufficient amount of protein through multiple meals throughout the day. This is one reason why you'll often see people that are physically fit or going for some type of physical physique fitness eating like it's their job, right? Because they need to make sure that they're getting enough protein in. Now, when it comes to carbohydrates, you can definitely add those in. When it comes to fat, you want to make sure that you're eating fats in their natural state, that you're not getting oxidized fat. And this is where things like bacon and pork and or ham, as I because bacon and pork are, they're from the same animal. Ham and bacon. This is why, like steak for breakfast, it kind of gets a bad rap, and it's because it's an oxidized fat, right? And so we want to minimize oxidized fats, not necessarily saturated fats, but we want to minimize oxidized fats. So fats that are cooked at high temperatures and the like, fats that congeal, fats that should be solid turned to liquid and liquid turned to solid. These are some of the mistakes that people make in breakfast, is that they overconsume carbohydrates and they don't get enough protein to make sure that they feel satisfied throughout the day, or they don't get enough protein to meet their activity level throughout the day. And then they end up very hungry, or they don't eat enough protein to satisfy the hunger hormone that's kind of still raging because they didn't get a good night's sleep. Now, I think it's important, Bonnie, that we also speak to another group of people that tend to wake up not hungry. We often will see, especially in today's world and trends of diets and physical fitness, we'll often see individuals skip breakfast and they'll say, forget that, it's the best meal of the day. I heard that if I eat within a compressed window of time, I'm not only going to lose weight better, I'm going to have better cognitive function. This is ultimately, Bonnie and everyone, where we need to pay attention to the body's signals. We need to pay attention to how does the body do. Many of you right now could sit and say, what was it like the last time I skipped a meal? How did I feel? Right? Because you may not be well selected for this short window or compressed window of time to be consuming. Regardless of when someone has breakfast, Bonnie, I still want them to break their fast with protein, right? So if your fast is 12 hours, like many people that do not eat before they go to bed at night, or an appreciable amount of time before they go to bed at night, and individuals that wake up in the morning and they start to prepare a meal, or they'll eat within the first hour of waking, there's a very good chance they've gone at least 12 hours without food. And that is maybe not a magic number, Bonnie, but it is the number where we find metabolism within those 12 hours can do that reset, can start to be in a position to use that protein fuel for energy, for muscle building, for satiety, and not go into a storage mode with it. Individuals that go into a 16-hour fast, meaning that they haven't eaten for the 8 to or so hours of sleep, and then several hours before, and then several hours after, do notice blood sugar benefits. They do over time notice satiety benefits, meaning that they find that they're able to manage their appetite. And some people really excel doing this. What I think is important to point out is that there's a difference between skipping a meal and fasting. Fasting takes that amount of time, that 12, 6, 14, 16 hours before the body goes, why is she not feeding me? Right? And then it shifts its energy source in the absence of carbohydrates. So I want you to listen to that. In the absence of carbohydrates, it shifts its energy source and says, I'm going to use some fatty acids, I'm going to use some fat. And so there's evidence behind that, right? But when individuals skip meals, what they're doing is going a short period of time. They're skipping lunch, they're eating maybe some breakfast or a morning snack, and then waiting until dinner, or if you're in the Midwest, supper. And you are then maybe snacking late at night. The issue here is that you're not giving your body enough time when you skip a meal to shift its metabolism and shift to start to look for fat. In fact, it does just the opposite. It looks to store anything that you do give it in your savings accounts. And your savings accounts, if you know what I'm talking about, is your rump, your backside, your hips, right? Your belly fat, those sorts of things. So what we find is that individuals often think that they're fasting when in fact what they're doing is skipping a meal. I want to just wrap it up with this thought here. I said in the absence of carbohydrates, your body in the absence of significant carbohydrates will shift its movement to fat burning, which is the number one reason I want you to break your fast with protein and not a carbohydrate.
Wow, that's awesome, actually.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you. That really cleared up a lot of things.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Now it's interesting because you have a question about the breakfast and about protein, and I had a question here that I think is interesting because I think it works with. Oh yes, perfect. So Sean from Columbus, Ohio writes, Dr. D, I've heard fat loss comes down to calories in and calories out. Now, in the short term, and this is what happens very often for people that are so, oh, wait, I got to read it properly. Is that true? Right? So, is that true? That is a half truth. Calories matter to the point that we ask about the quality of calories, right? A calorie is not a calorie. Quality of calories matters. So, fat, carbohydrates, and protein have varied amounts of calories attached to them. So 4 grams of, or 4 calories per gram of a carbohydrate, a protein, and then 9 grams for fat. So many people said 9 grams, it's like twice again as much to burn fat. Why would I eat fat? Right? Because of the way the body uses fat for energy, the way the body uses fat for brain health is one of the reasons why you would do this. So, really, what the studies have borne out is that in a very short window of time, low calorie eating is effective at losing weight, but at the expense. I often say for every gimme, there's a gotcha. At what expense? Missing many of the building blocks that come from medium and long chain and short chain fatty acids that can help with metabolism. At the expense of what? Sometimes a sufficient amount of protein to be able to meet our needs, which really does bring up an important question. Is plant protein sufficient? Plant protein is sufficient if you're good at mixing your proteins and making sure that you're getting a full spectrum of the essential amino acids that the body needs to run and keep itself going. Some of these are difficult to get if you are not committed to understanding amino acid profiles. So, really, what I want to say is in the short term, calories in and calories out, right? Just burn more calories, right? Go for a run, right? Go for a brisk walk. Um, um, that by itself is a half truth because it's only for a short period of time, Sean, that's the case. What ends up happening over time is that metabolism, in particular hormone metabolism, will start to override those signals. Unfortunately, the body's metabolism is built through an adaptive process. So we are metabolically adaptive, we are physically adaptive, we are mentally adaptive. We get used to the good life, right? And people that have seen hardship can get used to a hard life in the sense that all of a sudden it's not as bad as it once was. And sometimes when we take away our good things, we go, wait a minute, I can't live like that. And then what do? We adapt. Well, your hormones are no different. You will adapt. So you apply the same stimulation, the same stimulus to the body, this low calorie diet, without a varied group of calories, without varying the diet. And what you will end up seeing is a reduction in your progress. So novelty matters. And one of the reasons why novelty of food choices matters, novelty of physical exercise matters, is because it stimulates the body in a unique way to ramp up, put the gas on metabolism and improve weight loss, improve hormone regulation, its movement, and actually the quality of your calories, fat and protein and carbohydrates that are signaling your hormones. So calories in and calories out is a half truth. What it really comes down to is, what are you doing to balance your hormones? Getting a good night's sleep is one of the number one things you can do to balance your hormones. Making sure that your liver detoxifies in a very healthy way. The first rule of losing weight is hormone balancing. The second rule of hormone balancing, or making sure that this calories in, calories out doesn't end up being the mantra for everybody, is good liver health. So many people with age and hormone regulation are so surprised to find out that I won't limit calories, and sometimes not even change their diet at first. The first thing I want to do, if someone wants to balance their hormones for better metabolism, longevity in the future, holding on to body composition or changing body composition, is I'll start with detoxification, whether it's botanicals or a diet detox, a food detox. The road to improving hormone balancing starts in the liver, where your liver can bind hormones, whether we're talking about the mother of all hormones, cholesterol, or we're talking about excess estrogen in women and men. You heard me, guys. Estrogen in men that's metabolizing in an abnormal way. Liver detoxification is a primary goal for hormone balancing, so that when you, if whatever diet you apply, um, you're going to see a better impact of that, because you're not struggling to get through the detox pathway. But remember, the first rule of healthy hormones is actually getting a good night's sleep. It's critically important for your blood sugar, it's critically important for your stress hormones, it's critically important for those hunger hormones that Bonnie didn't know she asked about, but I brought up, right? Leptin and ghrelin. It's critically important for your testosterone, for your progesterone, as women and men. And that's the balance, right? Progesterone and testosterone, stress habits. These are the things that are going to dictate your weight, your mood, your aging practices, how well you sleep, and ultimately, when you wake up, how well you eat. Because our judgment gets kind of skewed when we're poorly hydrated, when we are not well slept, and we're feeling pretty blah, right? And we end up just being like, whatever, I'm going to do better someday. So I really want to encourage you guys to, if you want to get started on a health habit, I want you to make sure that you're paying attention to a sleep routine, a hydration routine. And if you're going to get started somewhere, start with the gut and detoxification. Fantastic, fantastic. So that was our question from Columbus, Ohio. Sandra, you've got a question from the West Coast. Lay it on me.
All right. Well, I missed the opportunity to be fit by 50. So I'm working on not being
At
sick
60?
at 60. Not going to be sick at 60.
There you go.
The workouts are coming in, and I need all the help I can get because I'm not young anymore. So, Dr. D, somebody told me I shouldn't be taking the Prime Longevity formula and the Peak Performance together. Is that true?
That is not true. That's not true.
Yay!
That's not true. Where it comes from, I believe, is often what happens through supplementation, where we think that two parts of a formula are in competition with each other, right? So this often happens with weight loss products and anti-stress products, right? They say, well, I need something that's going to ramp up my metabolism. I don't want something to calm me down, right? Not understanding that when you take the pedal, you take your foot off the gas in stress, right? You're allowing your body to do something else with those thermogenic botanicals that help you lose weight potentially, right? Well, the same is true here. For those of you that are unfamiliar, peak performance is just what it sounds like. It is a peak athletic formula. It's got vitamin D. It has an antioxidant called pycnogenol in it. It has vitamin C in it. But the thing that's here that people might think is competing is the fact that it has branched chain amino acids. Branched chain amino acids are essential. The body can't make them, so you need to take them. You need to get them through a diverse protein diet, whether that is a carnivores type diet, meaning you're a meat eater, maybe you're a pescatarian, you eat fish, right? You're going to have to find other places to find some of those amino acids, or you are a plant-based eater, which means you're going to combine certain plants together to create the proteins that you need. And so many people feel that with the branched chain amino acids that are in peak performance, that they're going to be in competition with the amino acids that are in longevity formula, just so that people know what's in longevity. Longevity also has the same branched chain amino acids in it. So people ask first, Sandra, well, then I must be getting too much. That's a waste of those branched chain amino acids. Why would I do that? Right? And so they often will say, which one do I need? Peak performance, or do I need longevity formula, which has an ingredient in it, a botanical called huperzine A, which is meant for cognitive performance. And then it has grapeseed extract in it, which is a potent antioxidant. And for an aging body, although you're not old, right? An aging body, or a body that's more mature, is, may have more cricks and cracks and a sense of like, oh, I got to walk that off, right? How many of us wake up and be like, oh, I'm getting old, right? Right? We end up having to get started. It's like, give me a minute, right? Well, you guys do this. This is self-care. This is like good for you. Like, give yourself a minute, right? But that's why people think that those two things are competing, because one of them is meant for this demographic that is concerned about muscle loss, and the other one is for the athlete. And they say, well, those are two different avatars. Those are two different client pictures. Could I take these together? Or they say, well, that's a waste of those branched chain amino acids. So let's just unpack that. Branched chain amino acids are essential. As I said, your body cannot make them. You need to take them. Depending on your activity level, you need to up how much you're taking. So there is 3 grams of branched chain amino acids in each one of these products, for a total of 6 grams of branched chain amino acids. These are very unique amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine. They need to be in a high combination, or they need to be in a high gram doses to do work. So if you are physically active, or you are moving from a place of inactivity to more activity, you want more branched chain amino acids for building up of your muscle, but also repair of your muscle, Sandra. Athletes take upwards of 15 to 20 grams of branched chain amino acids. So collectively with these, or combining these two, we're only talking about 6. If you are concerned about muscle weakness, this is one of the superpowers of branched chain amino acids. They're quickly assimilated into muscle, as opposed to going through other processes of being absorbed or utilized in the body through the liver. They are readily available because they are branched chain amino acids to the muscle. What's unique about peak performance and longevity formula, however, is that they are instantized. And what that means is that they have any of a backbone that would prevent them from readily being assimilated has not so much been removed, but they've been instantized. They've been processed in a way that they are even faster absorbed or put into the muscle for muscle growth, as well as muscle repair. Something important to talk about, if we're ever going to talk about muscle growth, the only thing that grows muscle is putting the muscle under load. You have to put the muscle under sufficient load for growth, right? But what's going to give it its building blocks to be able to do that, to be able to shoulder that weight, are going to be those branched chain amino acids. What I would do differently when people say, can I take them together? I often have to try to clarify or tease that out a little bit and say, do you mean at the same time, or do you mean on the same day? Because I do think, Sandra, people will see benefit from taking longevity formula at night and peak performance either as their pre-workout or their post-workout. There's, while the camps are split on whether or not it needs to be protein immediately after exercise or carbohydrates, at Texas A&M in 2011 did a pretty great study that showed at the 90-minute window after exercise, using carbohydrates, so something like peak performance, was a better way to extend growth factor or growth stimuli on the muscle. So many people continue to consume protein immediately after after exercise, right? And when they say immediately, it's within that 30 minutes. And we could even get into a question about that because, amino acids need to line up pretty well to be able to build muscle. So again, the primary goal here is to put the muscles under load, right? If that's a heavy carry, if that is your own body weight, it should be sufficient. And I often will tell people 20 minutes of sufficiently hard work needs to take place for your muscle to get that appropriate stimuli to grow, to shred fat, to improve metabolism, to send good signals to the body that you're not hungry anymore. Yet so that's a great peak performance time around exercise. But growth factor goes up at night when we rest or when we sleep. And while there's not actually a growth hormone secretagogue or precursor to growth hormone necessarily in peak performance, there is a brain reputer in there, right? A brain nootropic is what they're often called. And so it's nice to repair the brain with that when you're going to sleep and the body goes into that repair mode. Again, because these branched chain amino acids are assimilated very quickly, when the body goes into rest or into what we often would refer to as a repair mode, this is also an ideal time for you to be able to get the branched chain amino acids that are in longevity formula. That being said, athletes would take these two together so that they could get even more branched chain amino acids, 6 grams instead of 3. Did that help?
Yes, ma'am. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sandra brings up an important question about combination, and so let's just, I mentioned the one about weight loss and anti-stress botanicals, that those tend to feel like they're at a tug of war with each other, when in fact, they're very appropriate. So one of the questions I often get asked, and I want to answer for everyone here today is, can I take an omega-3 fatty acid and CLA, which is an omega-6 fatty acid? Can I take them together or do they compete? So honestly, what is competing with your omega-3s is your diet most often, not your supplementation. We see this in folic acid. We see this in calcium and magnesium. It's often dietary choices, enrichment in food that is the bigger obstacle here. So the average individual in the United States consumes an appreciable amount of pro-inflammatory foods, whether that comes through dairy products, grains, or meat or animal products. Those are all going to be very rich in omega-6s. And so we need to supplement our diet and compete with all of those omega-6s in our diet with an omega-3. That being said, it is the abundance of omega-6s that are found in diet that is the problem. The fact that they are often paired with other pro-inflammatory, either food preparation, right? Food quantity, right? That just tends to overwhelm the body, or we've glycated them in something. For some reason, we love sauces, right? And sauces are a problem. Sauces glycate in the body and they'll just make a food more inflammatory, right? Are there healthier sauces? Of course, there's healthier sauces, right? But the idea here is to eat food as close to its natural state as possible. And so it often ends up being the way we cook food that give them their flavor, right? Not the sauces or the junk or the things that we add to them. So I want us to think about becoming, good with some of those culinary things. When you look at omega-6s, conjugated linoleic acid is an omega-6, but it's very unique. That word conjugated means something. It means that omega-6 has a very particular shape to it. And that omega-6 has been shown to enhance what? White adipose tissue, WAT. It has been shown to stimulate white adipose tissue to move into lipolysis or the breakdown of fat, specifically fat for energy, right? So we often will hear about white adipose tissue and yellow adipose tissue. And the yellow stuff is supposed to be the really thermogenic stuff. Well, one of the things that conjugated linoleic acid does is enhance that white adipose tissue, a more pro-inflammatory adipose or fat tissue, and liquefy it. So what we're really talking about with an omega-3 and this specific omega-6 is that they're not going to compete. One of the reasons for that is that the conjugated linoleic acid is actually liberating some of the fat that your body can use for fuel, for energy, for blood sugar regulation, but ultimately it's going to pare down fat, which itself is pro-inflammatory and probably the bigger issue. So I always want to ask people to pay attention to the abundance or the quantity of where these ingredients are coming from. And supplementation often is significant enough to make a difference in metabolism, but nothing, not even supplementation, will outdo a bad diet. So most of the time we're doing ourselves in, not because we paired two supplements together, but because we put too much junk in our face, right? And then thought that the supplements were going to clean up the mess after the party. Okay. You know, I want to, V has a question, and and it's really near and dear to my heart. Because one of the things that I like to do is help women get pregnant, stay pregnant, and then feel amazing after pregnancy. So Vi, go ahead and ask me your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. D. So my question is, I have heard a lot of prenatal vitamins contain omega-3 or DHA EPA. Is it rare and convenient? Is it rare and convenient to take in combination like that? We don't have to separate them. Is that true?
So it is true, two things. It is true that it is true that some prenatal vitamins come with DHA already in them. That is true. Is it true that you need to take these two types of ingredients, a prenatal in particular, a better form of folic acid and DHA for the health of the baby? That is also very true. Is it true that they need to be taken together, not in the same supplement? That is not true. Now, you did say something I think is important, which is it is convenient. And while I will agree that it is convenient, most women, and I get to say this from experience because I come from a birthing center, most women don't tolerate prenatals like that. Here's the reason why. When a woman is pregnant, she already feels pretty nauseous. When you take a prenatal, it will sit on the stomach. B vitamins don't taste good. Many minerals, in fact, don't taste good. So when that sits on the stomach, right, because she's not digesting as well, because she's already nauseous, she's less likely to tolerate that. Now, V, if I add fat to that, now it's not a ridiculous amount of fat. So I want to go back to what I said about diet again. Supplements don't add so much that's going to be a massive issue. But when I add another element to a pregnant, another constituent to a pregnant woman's prenatal that already is likely to make her nauseous, the one ingredient I didn't also mention is iron. Iron's known to constipate us. It's known to cause headaches. Prenatals are very difficult to maintain adherence with. Many pregnant women will not adhere or take their prenatal on a regular basis. It may be convenient, but if it's unsettling to their stomach, they're just simply not going to do it. And there's a higher potential for a prenatal and omegas to disrupt stomach comfort. But the one thing that I really want to pull out here isn't that DHA isn't important. It's one of the reasons why we have in our mommy children's line, in the DNA Miracles line, a liquid omega for this purpose, so that mommy can still get full spectrum omegas for the health of her baby, but also have something that's very easy for her to swallow if she doesn't want to swallow one of the heart health omega-3 fatty acids. One of the things that's very special about the isotonic prenatal, to your point about what is best for baby's development, is that the B vitamins that are in the isotonic prenatal are methylated. And so we know that pregnancy is doesn't hinge on, but one of the contributing factors to a healthy pregnancy is a healthy, what's called methylation cycle. And so when you already take methylated B vitamins like quatrophoic, like a methylated form of B12 called methylcobalamin, an active form of B6, which is critical to her insulin sensitivity, her blood sugar regulation, the hormones that her body needs to make. And that is called P5P, or a B6 that's non-synthetic. It is a methylated form. What we're doing is really improving cell division, cell maturation, healthy cell communication with those methylated B vitamins. The magic of the prenatal in an isotonic form is that isotonics move from the stomach, when taken on an empty stomach, move from the stomach into the small intestine very quickly, very efficiently. And what that means is the number one reason why a woman won't take a prenatal is because it makes her sick to her stomach. This moves off the stomach very quickly. If we were to put omegas in this product, we would not be able to make it isotonic, and we would not be able to move it out of the stomach quickly so it didn't upset her stomach. The last thing I want to say about that is that we use a very special form of iron called sun active iron. Sun active iron is a very specialized phosphate form of the iron that is non-constipating, is non-headache forming, does not oxidize, so it doesn't have a metallic or iron taste. So we really paid attention to the reasons why a woman won't take a prenatal and made sure that we covered those, and then gave, of course, an external option for an omega-3 fatty acids. That's a very good question, because you can have very good formulations and even good thought behind a formulation, like pairing a prenatal and an omega together. But if the demographic that you made that formula for is less likely to take it, because there is, as I say, for every gimme, there's a gotcha. It's more convenient, but they are less likely to be adherent to taking it because it's less likely to feel comfortable on their stomach. Is this true for 100% of pregnant women? It's not true for 100% of pregnant women. But what we do find is a large percentage of individuals that look at food, and this is the pregnant group, that look at food that they used to love, go, oh, right? We want to focus on what's not going to make them sick or uncomfortable. So we most definitely made sure to pay attention to this group and said, let's make sure that we give her something that is very good for her pre-pregnancy, reproductive years. And it's really important that a woman that wants to get pregnant start taking a prenatal. It's very important. And most women don't know that they're pregnant for about 4 to 5 weeks. And so we want to make sure if she's trying to get pregnant, that she's already taking a prenatal. This was specifically formulated for the metabolic demands of a female that's trying not just to get pregnant, but maintain a pregnancy. And it's truly ideal for the metabolic demands on the woman after pregnancy for breast milk production. Let's be honest, she's not going to get a lot of sleep, either is her partner, right? So we just want to make sure that they're very, very well nourished. That's a great question. I want to answer this one because I thought, gosh, what a great question that can break some myth from the 70s. Sarah from Boise, Idaho asks, Dr. D, I heard that running is best for me if what I want to do is lose fat. Is that true? That is a half to not true. There is something that happens in the body with running, and running, especially if you're not a runner, boy, does that put you through the paces. Bum, bum, right? The idea here is that running is a fantastic stimuli to the body. It is full body exercise. And while you can't separate your cardiovascular health from your muscular health, it's all connected, people, right? So this idea of cardiovascular exercise versus strength training, that you've never swung a kettlebell is what I'm telling you, right? Because it's all cardiovascular, it's all metabolic, and it's all strength. And that's one thing that running tends to miss out on after time. Running is difficult in the beginning, everything is difficult in the beginning, but we tend to adapt to running. And so while it is good for burning calories, it's probably not the most efficient way you could burn calories. Running a long distance is just what I said. You've got to run a long distance, and you can change your intensity by going up a hill. You can change your intensity through speed, right? But at the end of the day, and really at the end of a handful of weeks and then a year, what you've done is you've adapted to what you've put the body through, Sarah. So now you need to add a different stimuli. You need to add more. You need to progress in some fashion. And running doesn't tend to be the most efficient way for you to burn fat, to burn calories, or build muscle, because we tend to adapt to it quite quickly. And it takes a very long distance for you to get a meaningful amount of calories. So it's just considered not a very efficient form. Now, this is from someone that started to run, right? And I'm going to tell you, I don't want to give up running, even though I might feel like there's some things I missed out on, like there's some strength exercises that I sometimes don't feel like I'm as good with because I decided to change out some of my exercises for running. But I do want to talk about many of the health benefits of running, have nothing to do with weight loss or calorie burning. Individuals that run, and this could be 1 time a week or 2 times a week, but they're running for a distance sufficient for them. This may be in the beginning a mile for you, but it will become 2 miles and then 3 miles. And so you can kind of see what I'm talking about with efficiency. People that run, however, do tend to have better appetite control. Studies do show they live about 3 years longer than people that are not runners 1 to 2 times a week. So what ends up happening as well, bring me back to this, there's a diminishing return sometimes on running, not just because it's inefficient, but because there's a time where you're running too much and you don't give your body enough time to recover. But let's go back to this 1 to 2 times a week. And we're talking about, we'll just leave it here at 1 to 2 times a week. These individuals do tend to be able to manage their appetite much better. So if overeating is a concern for you, running might be something you add to your program. Individuals that run do live on average 3 years longer than people that are not runners. And so that's an important factor for longevity. They are cardiometabolically inclined. I mean, if I ever had to run away, if something were to happen and there was an emergency, I'd want to be able to run. One benefit of being a runner, or being able to run might be a better way for me to say that, is you increase something in the body called physiologic headroom. And what I mean by that is, if here is robust life and here is death, I want as much distance between these two as possible, right? With age, we start to see things come together like this. And so I want the capacity to be able to keep my metabolism going. And running is one of the ways that you can do that. You can increase physiologic headroom. The other one is making sure that you hold on to your lean muscle mass. So being metabolically flexible, where you are able to lift and be strong, because that is just as important. In the case of an emergency, I also want to be able to lift up heavy things if I need to, which comes back to Sandra's question about the importance of those branched chain amino acids for muscle building or muscle growth. Running is not considered the best way to burn fat. You will lose fat, but there will be a diminishing return. There'll be a point where you're not going to see those benefits. You may call it a plateau. What it truly is adaptation, and then ultimately a lack of progression, right? Yeah, there's that one. So Bonnie, I feel like you had a question. Was it about timing of protein, or did you have a different question?
Well, we talked about in the morning and when you get up.
Yeah.
But another thing that I just keep hearing so many different things is about how close to going to bed you should or shouldn't eat, or what you should or shouldn't eat. I hear that story, like you shouldn't eat within 3 hours, you shouldn't eat a carb. Well, is that true?
It is true. So, but we should put some clarifying we should put some pins in some of these things. So should you not eat carbs at night? You shouldn't eat carbs late at night, and you shouldn't eat carbs, or you shouldn't eat crappy carbs, right? So you shouldn't eat junky carbs. And what we find is individuals that don't either get a sufficient amount of food during the day tend to find themselves snacking at night. I mean, right? Sometimes this is an issue with emotional eating. They're bored. They had a rough day. We do end up finding people that will just eat, and they're mindlessly eating because they're just trying to dampen down the stress of the day. So I do want to be really clear about this. Like sometimes it's the habit that's the problem, or the reason why we move to things like alcohol or desserts or just mindless snacking, right? Is that something's going on in the day that we're trying to escape from. We just want to take a break for ourselves. And so sometimes it's the habit that comes with it. And so I want to encourage individuals that do snack late at night to think about a different habit that they could do. And like this is, we've often said, oh, you should get up and go for a walk after you have dinner at night. But that dinner should happen within at least, you should finish your meal at least within 2 hours of going to bed. And there is evidence that individuals that eat closer to 2 hours to bed, even if it's a quality food or a quality meal, do tend through digestion, having to digest that meal, do tend to sleep less well. If there was an appreciable amount of sugar, even if you would consider it a healthy carbohydrate, so not these crappy carbs or sugars or pastries or dessert at night, we do still have to manage an insulin spike. And insulin in and of itself can actually help you go to sleep. The problem is it doesn't help you stay asleep. So we often find people that eat a significant amount of carbohydrates at night. And I've got one caveat for this. People that eat a significant amount of carbohydrates late at night tend to be more fragmented sleepers. And so now we're back to the power of protein. We're back to, if you're eating at night, if you're someone that the schedule has just meant that this is when you work out at night. And so you come home and then you eat after you work out, right? I may encourage you to think about being more of just a protein meal, but again, within those 2 hours at least, so that you've got some time to digest it. Could you use things like digestive enzymes to speed up that process? I feel like you could, Bonnie. Could you, maybe eat less at night because you drank some more water or you added more fluid, so you ended up consuming less volume? I think that would be a way to work with some of those things at night. But by and large, eating close to bed is not just a digestive problem. It ends up stimulating hormones that then need to find their balance. And that is not in line with getting a good night's sleep. So we end up finding fragmented sleepers or people that didn't fall asleep very quickly when they do that. Right. It's interesting that you would ask that question, because we did have a question from Stephen from Portland, Oregon. Says, Dee, I've heard I shouldn't exercise before bed. Is that true? And that is a half truth. It is okay to exercise before bed. One of the things that I didn't say about running that I could have is that individuals that run do tend to sleep better at night. And so if you're going to run, if you're going to exercise before bed because you didn't get it in at another time during the day, running might be the thing that you do. It does calm the brain, right? If you run without headphones, many runners will say that running with headphones is cheating, right? You need to be with yourself. You need to be with your brain. You need to remind yourself that you are a powerful, amazing, for crying out loud, you're running, right? So, do that with yourself. So there could be some huge meditative health, spiritual practice, meditative mindfulness practices that come from running. When it comes to exercise before bed, it does ramp some people up. So what they have found is that cycling is okay, running is okay. Some of these more endurance style exercises are better. It's the high intensity interval training that tends to be the problem before sleep. high intensity interval training does ramp up growth hormones, but not in the way that we want. The body does perceive that, not so much as a stressor, but the body does respond to, I jumped on my camera, does respond to that with some hormones that are ready for aggression, for that split glycolic, just fast bursts of movement. So high intensity interval training is probably the thing you don't want to do before you go to bed if you want to get a good night's sleep. But exercise as a general rule is not against the rules, especially if it's the only time that you're going to exercise. Exercise is really, really important for your aging. It's important for your sex life. It's important for your brain. If it's the only time you can get it in, right? And then if it's trouble to get it in during the day, maybe one of these sessions, we're going to talk about, ways that you can do 20 minutes of very meaningful work at your desk. I want to real quick, not just thank my guests, but I do want to reach out to our field and see if anyone watching has asked a question that I am able to answer. One of the things that I could have said at the beginning and have not said is that I won't be able to be your private physician. I'm unable to answer questions about your medical complaints. Not knowing your history, I won't be able to answer questions about, is this blood thinner right for you? Or could you do something other than a blood thinner, for example? If you've got questions like that, it's always great to utilize resources we've made available that can help your practitioner feel better equipped to help you answer questions about what's the right supplement regimen for you. So I won't be able to answer questions about diseases. Very fun. Wendy Moquin had the same question about eating after a certain time at night. So this is a question that's come in. Dr. D, I've always heard that when wanting to lose weight, it's tough to know how to satiate that feverish hunger. Ivy, the way you do that is by getting a good night's sleep. I know it sounds like a cop-out, but I'm always going to say sleep is the way to do this. But your hunger hormone is intimately linked to how well you slept. Now, there are other tricks because people may not be getting enough food. I often find that people that are wanting to lose weight don't appreciate, because they're not writing it down, right? They don't appreciate how very little they are actually eating. They often will find it's not just that they're not getting enough protein, they're just simply not getting enough of anything. But if they are doing well and they're getting the types of calorie balanced diet that they need and they're still hungry, things like tea can be very helpful. Bone broth, warm bone broth, or soup broth can be very helpful to satiate those hunger hormones in the body. So funny. Someone asked about CLA and omega, so I'm glad that we answered that. We did answer some questions about intermittent fasting earlier, so this is fantastic. We're right on point, panelists. Now, this is an interesting question. I've always heard that you should eat fruit away from the meal. Is that true? So it is interesting, and that is true, that many people will digest proteins better away from fruits, or fruits away from protein. And this has a lot to do with the enzymes that are responsible for breaking down foods. So fruit in particular just requires a different set of enzymes that protein and fat do. So when we think about mingling foods, fruits don't tend to mingle well, especially if you cook them, because now you've shellacked them. Now you've turned them into a glycation product that really can hurt your body. But fruits don't tend to digest as well. with proteins and fats. And so, you know, I always tell people if you could eat it at a picnic, it's probably not good for you, because this is where we think about, you know, hamburgers and burger buns and like fruit salads and things like that. And it's just the wrong combination of foods together. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything over here. So this is an interesting question from Sue in Dix Hills. Actually, I don't think she's in Dix Hills anymore. I believe that they have moved to sunny Florida. Well, Sue, she says she's heard that the body's looking for sugar or carbohydrates in the morning and that the isotonics can fill that group. Is that true? Your body often will look for things, but that doesn't mean it's always the best solution. So what I want to say here is that really we want to break our fast with proteins. And I know a lot of you are saying to yourself, wait, what? We take isotonics on an empty stomach, right? Right. And you can still do that. The amount of carbohydrates that are in an isotonic and how it efficiently moves from the stomach into the small intestine for absorption does not initiate digestion in the same way. Now, it would break an intermittent fast. It does break a fast, Sue. But what we're not talking about, we're back to that idea of how many carbs are you actually getting in a meal, right? Just like we talked about with the omegas and the CLA. What we're not talking about is the same quantity of carbs, sugars that you would ultimately be getting through breakfast, which still means that while you broke your fast with a small amount of carbohydrates, it wasn't like breaking it with a carbohydrate breakfast. Where isotonics really fit into this demographic are the people that wake up feeling very hungry and they need to get a little bit on their stomach, right? And they often will feel satisfied and then can go about their routine of making breakfast instead of just eating the components that would have otherwise been their breakfast. So because it's a small amount of carbohydrate in isotonics, even when we mix several of them together, it's not the significant amount that we will often see through breakfast foods. Okay, you guys, you had a lot of questions about fat loss, which, like I said, we were on point. We answered some really great questions about fat loss, about exercise. That is where most of your questions were. You guys, I hope you enjoyed this first session of That's Not True, right? We're going to be doing this each and every Wednesday night between 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Actually, it's Eastern Standard Time now, right? Because we moved into the Daylight Savings Time, so Eastern Standard Time. To 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can do exactly what we did tonight and what Bonnie, Sandra, and Bea did by sending in questions to Market America Healthy Living at MA Healthy Living at marketamerica.com. Just make sure to pose your question to Dr. D, asking it just like this. Dr. D, I've always heard, fill in the blanks, is that true? And I'll let you know if that is a full truth, a half truth, or that's not true. Until I get to see you next time, please go be good to yourself, be good to those around you. Remember, self-talk matters. So make sure that you choose positive words for you and those around you. Like I said, until next time, go be healthy, go be brilliant. Thank you again, Bonnie, Sandra, for helping me with my first show. It was an absolute pleasure to spend time with you. And if you have more questions, we'll invite you back.